broadcast of the demolding. So this is usually a time-consuming process. We had this in the hot box for about an hour and a half. So now we're going to slowly start to pop the seams, all those little pry points that we had in there. We're going to start working. So we're just basically putting it in there and kind of moving it very gently. You don't want to go too nuts with it because you could break it, but we're going to use the full depth of that channel. And after this being in there for a good hour and a half, we're going to have loosened up quite a bit. The clay is going to be quite soft. So at this point, we're not really worried if it actually messes up the sculpture, because if we did our job right, we're going to have a good mold. So this one's doing well on this side. How's this? Is this moving at all?
It's already moving a little bit.
Okay, good, 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 good.
That's beautiful.
Okay, you see that crack is starting to open up a little bit more. And you want to go slow. Whenever you're demolding something, anything, you want to move slowly. You don't want to risk breaking the mold, particularly smaller, finer areas that are inside that you want to keep whole. And just by putting the wood in there a little bit.
We have an interesting crack here, by the way.
Yep, that's just where it's probably, yes. That's okay, because we're far enough away from the edge there.
Just a burlap point.
Just ever so slowly. We lost a little bit there. That's why you also want to let it set for a while and let it firm up. And this is also why you make your flange as big as you do, because if you don't, you run the risk of losing your flange and breaking a lot of detail off. So we want to go very slowly in this process. Sometimes it seems like it's almost too slow, but you rush this part, and no matter how good your sculpt is, you've got nothing to show for it at that point. But what we're doing is just working a little bit at a time here. Ever so gently. It's quite common for little parts of the edge to break and dislodge a little bit. Don't worry necessarily about that. It just means, hey, let's be careful about what we're doing here.
You don't need to put any sticks either.
See how we're getting a lot of motion off of that other back half. So that's probably where I'm going to start. Let me see if I can spin this around a little bit. So this will actually be the very first section we did. So it's separating very well. And once you get minor separation like that, you can kind of pull this corner out. We remember from the way that we had that situated in there, that the gills were kind of locking it in, so we're going to pull it out straight from the piece.
Beautiful.
And see, exactly as we thought. We did lose some of the gills, but that's okay, because the sculpt is what's most important. I mean, the mold is what's most important. At this point, the sculpt, if we wanted to remove it and retool any of that, we could. But this is what we're looking at here, just a little bit of grabbing here. Of course, because we put adequate mold release, we had pretty good separation. All the detail points are good. The grayer areas that you see in here is the wet clay that we had on there originally.
Greg is asking if we spray air into it, could we separate it?
Air on this probably wouldn't work too well. You can use that on certain things, especially silicone, but on the rigid molds like this, it doesn't really pop very well. It's harder to get it in there. Now that we have a little bit of a leverage point, we can start seeing how much this is going to move by hand. But as I can tell, it's got a lot of grab on the front half as well. It didn't seem to be moved at all from that point. So we may still have to heat up the front of the mold a little more, but that's not uncommon. Important thing is just to make sure that the mold itself is as secure and safe as we can get it. But I can see here about a 1/4 inch now starting to develop. Anytime you have to put a pry point in or work a pry area besides the pry points that you put in, you're going to want to stick a couple of sticks in there. I can't really show you how this is looking now, but the wood is a little bit more forgiving than putting a metal object in there. So what I usually do is stick 2 in like this and then kind of wedge the screwdriver or the pry bar in there and then just very gently. And you see how easy that's kind of popping.
I'll hold the. Ooh, that came out very nice.
And that one was actually cleaner than the first half because
cooler.
we had a lot of the clay that got grabbed in there, much less in this area in here. So we're good.
That detail's gorgeous.
Yes. So I'm going to set this over here.
Be safe in the chair.
Should be good there. So now we have this monster wedged in the front. And this is what we really have to worry about here.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can try, because you pretty much know that a piece like this is going to get damaged or destroyed when you're removing it. And I know that a lot of people always, freak out because that's pretty much the only thing you can do is, be able to remove this. There are a couple of ways we can try, but I don't want to damage it. That's the most important thing. The mold. What we're probably going to try to do.
Ooh, are we doing the lift out? Oh boy.
We might. Let's see how much resistance we get here.
Ooh.
Just going to test the waters, no pun intended.
Oh, we have lift.
So we are seeing some give.
Not toward the head. Wait, no, a little bit toward the head. Very slightly. Not a lot, though.
Okay, so it's not lifting very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell by looking down here, we do have plenty of clearance, so it's not grabbing the armature. I think we're just getting a lot of mechanical grab. So unfortunately, we're probably going to have to free up some of that material. Can you get some of those empty monster clay containers too?
Sure thing.
What we're going to have to do is just get a little bit more leeway around here, because up here it's still very, very firm. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I don't think we'll even need that quite yet. Just try to remove some of this clay manually. You see this depth of clay that we're playing with here. As it shrinks, we're in about a good inch from the head of the model. So it's just going to continue to shrink. When we do the latex cast, it'll shrink about 12% or so. If we do have to wind up putting this back in the hot box, it'll be a much quicker process because we're not eating through anywhere near what we were on that back half before. And unfortunately, this will probably have to go. I know, everyone has
I
a
know,
heart attack.
everyone's like,
Your floor
no.
sculpture.
Yes.
Ah.
This is what happens. This is the destructive part of art.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get a piece out quite clean, but I just don't think that's going to happen with this one.
Usually not something quite so detailed, though.
No. And this has a lot of undercuts in those gill areas and all in the mouth and everything. Sometimes you do see stuff like that happen.
It's even better is when you're working on a sculpture for fun and you have a commission and you realize you don't have time to go get more monster clay. I buy fun sculpture.
I've done that from time to time. Had to sacrifice for the good of a deadline project.
Mm-hmm.
This is the result of most of our work when we do it. It winds up getting destroyed in the molding, or the demolding process, I should say.
The whole time we're all praying to the mold gods.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that always helps, believe it or not.
They don't have names, they're just in our minds.
Of course, as much as I can use my fingers, I do, because I don't want any kind of damage to the piece, to the mold. And if I'm trying to crank on it with a wood tool or something like that, there is a chance, not always likely, but there is a chance that you can nick and grab detail that is still pretty soft in this. This ideally is going to harden up over a week's time to be much, much firmer. And then the good news is that most of this clay, if not all of it, can then be reused, melted down and reused.
Yeah, this could be a little bit of Frankenstein in this one.
Yep. All of the many projects that we've worked on, every time we have to get more, we put that away and clean it up and then use it again the next time. But we want to be really, really careful around these gill folds and everything, because those are all of our detail in there. So just take your time. You know, most pieces that you do, if it's like a mask of a zombie or something like that, you won't have as many undercuts or as deep undercuts. But you have to know how to handle them when they come up.
I'd say the main perpetrator of this one's probably the mouth.
Yeah, I'm thinking the mouth and those long eyebrows. They're very long and flowy and kind of go up and around. And then all of this clay you'll probably see again in the other side when we do hands, feet, all that stuff. And we'll look at this strength. It's still pretty firm over here. So we need to get a little bit more heat here, but I'm not sure that the hair dryer is going to go, or if we're going to have to put this into the hot box for another half hour or so. Because I just don't like that this is so firm, and as firm as this is, as I'm trying to demold it, if it's going to break, it's going to break on very important parts on that side. So let's do this then. We'll get it back in the hot box for about another half hour or so and soften up this side so we don't have to deal with all those deep undercuts and everything. And then we will be back. So if everyone doesn't mind hanging around for a little bit longer.
You want to just take questions for 30 minutes?
Well, did anyone have any questions so far, or is it kind of just like us? You kind of just sit there on pins and needles until it's out. If you got any questions, let me know.
Meantime, we'll start putting the hot box again.
Okay. Yep. Then I guess we're going to get this into the hot box. We'll give us about an hour. That'll give us enough guarantee to get it in there, and we can test it and make sure that it's okay. But It might be a little bit earlier than that, so between a half an hour and an hour. That way we know we're getting good even heat down here on this face part. So anyway, we'll be back. I promise you won't miss a thing. We're just going to heat this up in the hot box a little bit longer. So yeah, Mike, that's not going to happen. No hammers around this part. All righty. Well, we'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
Sure, you say no hammers. There's one right there.
Oh, I'm not going to use it.
No hammers.
That is not going to happen.
It is still alive, by the way.
Still doing its thing. It's thinking about quitting. Let's see.
Well.
We've got enough of a channel here just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much lighter to move it, so we can go ahead and do that, even if it doesn't stop being live for a minute.
Camera is currently plugged into the extension cord, which I need.
Oh, that's okay. We can pull that out. It'll have enough juice for now. And that'll also give the gill parts in this other side chance to.
Oh yeah, that is so much lighter now.
Isn't that nice not having that big old back fin on it? Yeah, that's going to be a lot better.
That's a whole lot better.
The only thing we had is a little bit of a double skin.
Alright, that sucks. How would that have occurred?
It looks like it's right here.